Good day, everyone. Welcome to our training for today. So we are already halfway in our module. So I hope that you have already answered the activities in our previous lessons and submit our first performance output, the explainer video. So I have already watched the output of the teachers, some of the teachers, and I am very much impressed with their output. And for those who are not yet done, kindly just continue, and then you may also ask an assistance for those who have submitted their output. So just continue, and then you do your best. So I hope you will not stop, because we have to be teachable. So kay teachers man ta, we have to adopt the new trends in learning, especially in this pandemic. Kay lahi naman gid ang katong face-to-face, and now that it's pandemic, so we have to adopt, we have to continue learning. Okay, so now I'm going to discuss with you the lesson 4, module 2, lesson 4, how to use events and time sampling. So if you have your module with you, kindly open it on page 48 so that you can follow the things that I am going to discuss with you. Get your module, get your pen. Now let's start our training. So here is the event and time sampling. It is another tools in assessing young children. So in this lesson, you will be expected to define event and time sampling. Then, cite the purpose of using event and time sampling. Then after that, you will also learn about the advantages and disadvantages of using event and time sampling. Then after that, you will also learn how to analyze the differences between event and time sampling assessment tool in assessing young children. So, naadi ay sila'y kalahian. What are their similarities? And then after that, you are going to apply what you've learned, the objectives from 1 to 4, and then that's the time that you are going to use event and time sampling in observing a child. So, expected that you are going to make an output, 1 for event sampling and 1 for time sampling. And then you are going to observe a child using these tools. Okay? Now let's go to the activate part. So you are going to read the clues below and fill in the correct answer. Try to answer the puzzle, either it is event or time sampling, based on the information below. Okay, good luck. Now let's continue with the acquire part, the discussion part. Let's define event sampling. So event sampling takes defined behaviors or events from the child being observed. So iyahang i-define unsa may hinungdan, what's the cause, the causes and the effects of the behavior. And then event sampling does not require length of recording period. So kana lang event. So in this sampling, the teacher is going to tally kung kapila na ga-occur o kahitabo na nga behavior sa bata of recording period. Okay. Then, event sampling is carefully defined before beginning the observation. So later on, I am going to show you the format, the ABC format, using event sampling. So event sampling requires time and skill to code behaviors and record incidents. So here you are going to use some codes. For example, for teacher, you just use T, for child C. So it's up to you, no? It's up to you as a observer. So So event sampling form can be developed that might include the following parts. So these are the important parts of event sampling, but there are different format, but these are just the basic parts of using event sampling. Number one is the target behavior, or unsa gid ang imong gina-target nga behavior para ma-correct nimo, para ma-help nimo ang bata to improve their behavior. Number two, causes of the behavior, unsa hinungdan sa behavior. And then the ABC model, the antecedent events. So antecedent is the event existed prior to the behavior occurred. So wala pa nahitabo ang behavior. Unsa man ang iyahang unsa may nahitabo unsa event. And then the consequences of the behavior. The consequence is the event took place immediately prior following the behavior. So unsa dayon nahitabo pagkahuman sa katong iyahang behavior. So again, antecedent, before nahitabo ang behavior. Then after the behavior, the consequence of behavior follows. Unsa dayon ang nahitabo pagkahuman adtong event, adtong behavior na observe sa teacher. So B is for behaviors to be encouraged. And then strategies to be used in intervening. So later, after the observation, you are going to have an intervention and interpretations. And then the follow-up, later observation to see if the problem is solved. So using the event and sampling, the teacher is going to identify the causes and the effects of the behavior and how will the teacher correct it. So here's the example of the event sampling. The child observed, ang bata nga gi-obserbahan is, the name is Laura, and then the name of the teacher or the observer, and then the age of the child, and the target or aim behavior. So here the teacher is trying to check if Laura speaks or socialize with adults. Kung maki-socialize ba si Laura sa mga kids. Maybe because the child is too quiet. So, maunang the teacher wants her to socialize with other kids. So, here's the abbreviations. As what I said, the teacher will use code. T for teacher, L for Laura, and C for child. Okay, now look at the time. So, here you are going to add a date. So, wala siya date, no time lang. But, if you are going to use the ABC model, by the way, this is an ABC model format. A for antecedent behavior, B for the behavior, C for the consequences. Here's the date and time. So, nahitabo ni nga behavior sa bata, ang mga oras. Antecedent, kung saan nahitabo sa wala pa nahitabo ang behavior interaction or behavior or interaction, then he is sa wala pa nahitabo, sitting in circle with other children and teachers. Naglingkod lang daw kami si Laura. This is just an example. And then after Ana, lingkod siya with the teacher asked Laura what she wants to play with. Sa iyang gusto dulaon. And then Laura looks away and then makes eye contact. Tanaw lang si Laura. But she does not respond to the teacher's speech and wrings hands. So, wala siya respond. She just look at the teacher. So, mo na iyang behavior. Tanaw lang niya. Wala siya natingog sa teacher. Wala siya nag-respond. And then, what happened after the behavior? Sa dayon consequence, or what happened? So the teacher suggests another child to take Laura to the playroom and Laura lived with the other children. So, wala gihapon si Laura naki-socialize with other children. So, ito siya nung ulawon siya. Another day, not the same day, or maybe kung gakahitabo lang na behavior, if there is no such specific period of time, kana lang event nga mo occur ang kana nga batasan nga gina-observe sa teacher, because the teacher is trying to correct the behavior of the child. She wants to check if Laura can socialize or not with other children. So, mo'to, ga-observe lang hapon si teacher, ga-observe siya, here's the observations, and then, after those several observations, the teacher will then make an interpretation. Of course, we have to avoid bias. We have to be accurate and specific with our interpretation based on our observations mo mag-handle in that situation. Okay, now let's continue with the advantages and the disadvantages using event sampling. The first one for the advantages is this method can uncover causes and effects of behavior. Of course, you are going to identify the cause and the effects using the ABC model. Imog yung ma-identify kung unsay hinungdan o unsay epekto sa behavior. And then, results of the observation can be used to plan appropriate interventions at individual's child development level. Of course, nakaplano na ka since you know well the child based on your observations. For example, kabalo ka nga ulawon kayo na siya, then you are going to plan on how is she going to overcome that behavior. For example, medyo siya lisod in that certain subject, then you will make an action for that challenges or for that certain behavior. Now, let's take a look at the disadvantages. Results cannot be generalized to another child or group of children. Of course, this is individual observation. You cannot generalize this one with other children. Dili nimo siya ma-generalize. And then, the event sampling requires time and skill to code behaviors and record incidents. Yes, of course, it may be time-consuming and it also requires skill to code behaviors. Kaya dili siya basta-basta lang nga, you just make your own interpretation. Maluhat-luhat lang. It really requires time and skills. And it's not always easy to establish the causes of behaviors. Dili siya sayo, no? Dili siya easy. Because you cannot just write what you think is right. But you really have to make your observation thorough and to make your data reliable. Okay. You might share it to the parents and then the parents will deny it. So you have to be specific, you have to be accurate, you have to really write the time and date, or even you may support some pictures para masabtan sa mga parents because there are some parents dili sila aware and they might think that we are just making our own stories. So pasabton na to sila, no? Because this will really help their children. Okay, now let's proceed to time sampling since we're done with the event sampling. So try to look at the differences and the similarities between the two assessment tools. They are quite similar, but they really have differences. So in the time sampling, it observes and records selected samples of child's behavior during predetermined intervals of time, 3 to 5 minutes in a workable interval. Meaning to say, there is a specific period of time. So, isag walay nahitabo, isag walay behavior occurred, but then, kanya ang specific time nga imong napili, imo hagid nang obserbahan. Or, time sampling aims to representative samples of behavior. Okay. Mo man siyang gina-specific time ang imong pag-observe, so it will help you okay, coding scheme are usually used with time sampling, the same with the event sampling. the teacher will use coding or abbreviations. And the teacher examines time sampling observations and write the educational implications of this child. Like in the event sampling, magbuhat po siya og intervention and interpretation. And then, napod siya follow-up intervention. Siya mga follow-ups. Na mga plan sa mga follow-up as a result kung saan iyang na-discover sa bata. So, these are the parts of time sampling. For the first column, let's just take a look at the example para masayon sa inyong This is the example of the time sampling. Of course, pangalan sa bata nga giobserbahan, edad sa bata, ang method, yang pamaagi, katong akong ginaingon sa inyo nga, katong time, in that specific time na iyahang giset sa pag-observe sa bata. So here, the teacher will observe 10 minutes for 30 seconds over 2-hour period. Naglibog na mo ba? Meaning to say, sa duha ka oras, mag-observe ang teacher or bahin-bahinon sa teacher og tag 10 minutes and then she is going to observe for 30 seconds. Dili kay hutdon niya og observe ang 10 minutes. So, for that 10 minutes, the teacher will just take a look or observe 30 seconds. So, she is going to record the important observations or katong mga important behavior anang 30 seconds. So, within or over 2-hour period. So, 10 minutes, mag-observe din siya 30 seconds over 2-hour period. So, duha ka oras. So, dili po siya whole day, no? But this is just her method. But as a teacher, you can make your own period of time na imuhang own method of observing, no? Kung pila lang pud ka oras ang imuhang gina-observe. So, here is the target behavior. Like the event sampling, na po target behavior. So, the teacher will see how David spends his time and if he is frequently involved disruptions. So, i-check sa teacher kung ginaunsan niya pag spend iyang time, no? So at this target behavior, the most fit for assessment tool nga bagay gid ani is the time sampling. Kaya naaman to'y specific time nga gina-observe nato. So here's the abbreviations. Just like the event sampling, we have the teacher, T for teacher, D for David. That's the name of the child. So here's the time and day, similar with the event sampling. But here, we are no longer using the ABC model or the antecedent, behavior, and the consequence. We are just using this setting, hanay tabo, and then the observation. So, tulo lang gid siya ka-part, no? But it has different method of observing. Different ilahang time. So, here's the time and date. 2 hours man siya. So, from 1 to 10. From 1:10 to 2:10. Okay, within 2 hours man siya. So, 1 to 1:10, nasa sa classroom. And then, observation, now they may be sa teacher. 1 to 20 p.m. So, 10 minutes. Observe na po ang teacher for 30 seconds. And so, din ang gibuhat sa bata. So, after that, observation, based on the observations you have made, that's the time that you can have your interpretation. Of course, you cannot make an interpretation if you do not observe thoroughly the behavior of the child. So, how can we make an interpretation kung wala man tayo observe? And then, here we have to be honest, we have to be kanang specific, and we have to be real. We have to avoid biases because it may affect your observation. And then after the interpretation, you are going to make a conclusion. Then iyang conclusion. And then after that, you may also make your intervention plan. Sa imuhang plano to help the child improve, and then you may make a follow-up schedule. So at this point, we cannot do this alone without the help of the parents. We really have to partner and to make the parents involved in developing and improving, especially their behavior, because behaviors will really affect their learning if we cannot correct it properly. And that is our main role, to help and make our learners learn, okay, based on yung mga assessment tools. You may not think this is useful, but I'm very sure na when you are already in the field, magamit din ninyo siya, no? Okay, here's the example. Now, take a look at the example of the time sampling. So, daghan kaayo siya advantages. So, and disadvantages. There are only 4 disadvantages. So, here, teachers can observe behaviors in a natural setting. Then, they can serve as basis for further assessment or to validate other assessment measures. Since, longer man yung period of time, so this can be basis for other assessment measures. Pwede ni siya basis anecdotal, pwede ni siya basis for sa time sampling, pwede ni siya basis sa other assessment tools or assessment measures. They can be fairly objective. Teachers can use them to observe interaction between children. So in observing them, we have to avoid interaction. Kung nag-observe ka sa bata, wala tayo interaction sa ilaha. But we just have to observe also their interaction with the other children. They can be used with more than one child at a time. So, pwede ka maka-observe, dili lang sa usa ka bata, but you can also observe with other children. So, teachers can document small changes in the behavior, and then they can be used to develop learning experiences for particular children. Let's take a look at the disadvantages. Time sampling takes time and training to do. Just like the event sampling, it takes time and skills to make this assessment tools, because we do not just make our own interpretation, but of course we have to be very careful on how are we going to make their interpretation. Dili lang kay basta-basta lang ito mag-interpret, no? Okay, we might get mistake, so basin masayot ta. So we have to be careful. Okay, when engaged with time sampling, the learners and teachers cannot interact with the children. So, dili man ta mag-interact because we are observing them. And then observers may miss some important information when recording their observations, since behaviors are not seen in context. So, siguro yung ma-miss ng mga important information. Okay, 2 hours, for example, 2 hours lang imong ginalaan in having that observation, since you are using the time sampling. Observers can overestimate the frequency of occurrence of certain. So, basig na sobraan niya, no? So, we have to be very careful. Okay, I think we're done with our discussion in the event and time sampling. I hope that you really understand the differences, the definition of the two, the differences, and the similarities. So now let's try to answer the activity 1. Here's the direction. Knowing these two methods, compare and contrast event sampling and time sampling using the Venn diagram. So here you're going to write the event sampling. Isang event sampling. You may also write the parts of event sampling or the definition of event sampling. Then also identify their similarities. Of course, both of them have a target behavior. So both of the tools requires time and skills in doing these assessment tools. And then time sampling. What is time sampling all about? So if you have read our module and if you listen to this video, I'm very sure that you can really get a higher score in this activity. Okay, now God bless with the activity 1. Let's proceed with our activity 2. So here you are going to apply what you have learned in this lesson. You are going to use event sampling in observing a child using the format below. So here's the ABC model: antecedent behavior, and the consequence. Again, antecedent behavior, this is the behavior prior to itong behavior nga nahitabo. So, and then the consequence is the following event took place immediately after sa diyahang behavior. So, write date and time. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to write the date. You may add date and time, and then the preferred behavior or the target behavior right there in your interpretation, or you may also write your intervention follow-up. You just have to write at least 2 to 3 events, so that would be enough. And of course, for the activity 3, you are going to use time sampling. You may observe child near you. It could be your relative, your neighbor, your nephew or niece. Following the format below, you may modify if the table, there's a need for it. So as I've said, just 3 observations or 3 events will be enough. Then write the implications or your interpretations. And here is your rubric as your guide. This would also be the basis of my grade in your output. And rubric for the time sampling. And the last activity is you are going to write the purpose and then identify the advantages and disadvantages of event sampling and time sampling. And here's your rubric for the matrix. Okay, so that is all about the event and time sampling. So God bless everyone. So thank you so much for listening, and see you all in our next virtual lessons. Goodbye.